With all of that in mind, for today's pod, each of us are going to give 3 sleepers and 1 bust focused on the best ball game market. So with best ball in mind, Alex, why don't you start with your first sleeper?
My first sleeper is Desmond Bane of the Memphis Grizzlies, who has an ADP of 50.6 on Underdog. Last year, he averaged 36 fantasy points per game, which is a fantastic mark. But we have John Morant, suspended for 25 games to start the season. And I actually think our projections might be a little too low. I feel like I erred on the side of caution when projecting Bane because I didn't want to, just get too crazy with it. But even with that being the case, we still have him ranked 30th in projected fantasy points per game at 40.7. And I think if you were to say he averaged 36 fantasy points per game last year with John Morant out for 25 games, could he average 4 more fantasy points? I think a lot of people would be like, sure.
You also don't have unconscionable gunner Dylan Brooks on this squad anymore.
And that's I think a part of Desmond Bane's fantasy value and maybe even Jaren Jackson's fantasy value that's kind of getting under-discussed.
Yeah, nice. No, I love that. We're always big Desmond Bane fans at RotoWire. Shannon, who do you want to start off with your first sleeper?
Yeah, one of my favorite sleepers on Underdog is Scary Terry Rozier, ADP of 103. Our projections have him valued as a top 53 player, ranking 53 based on projected fantasy points for the upcoming season. Feel like there's some discount here with Scary Terry due to, the team basically getting healthier. You've got Miles Bridges is returning to the rotation. They re-signed PJ Washington. You got some young talent that's going to see a bigger role with the Hornets this year with Brandon Miller, their first round pick, Mark Williams, first round pick from last year, who's probably going to be the starting center for the team. So a lot of projections or interest in Scary Terry has gone down, but to me, I look at that depth chart. He's locked in my opinion, is going to be locked into the starting lineup. He'll also be the main guy getting backup minutes at the point guard spot.
Yeah, the reason his fantasy value kind of slipped last season was mostly percentage based. And obviously this is a points format. And yes, Miles Bridges is back, like you said, but still a really good chance Terry Rozier is the number 2 option on this team.
Nice. All right, gentlemen, I'm also sticking it with guards. For my first sleeper, I'm going north of the border. Dennis Schroder, starting point guard in Toronto. Scotty Barnes is not Grant Hill. I think we learned that. The hype was a little too big on running the offense through Barnes. Remember that with this same roster, Freddie VanVleet had 7.2 assists per game and also hoisted 16.1 field goal attempts per contest. Schroeder's poor field goal percentage doesn't hurt you in this format. He seems old, but he's only 30 years old. He's never been shy about shooting, and they have no other point guards on this roster. Malachi Flynn is not a point guard. He's really a shooting guard tweener. I just see a ton of minutes for Schroeder in Toronto. Love his upside. He's got an ADP right now of 135. That's practically free. 135 for a starting point guard is insane.
My second sleeper, Jusuf Nurkic of the Portland Trailblazers, ADP of 120 on Underdog. Yes, he is an injury risk, but we're talking about best ball here. He's played more than 65 games just twice in his 9 seasons. However, if you take a look at Portland's depth chart, they do not have a backup center. Anybody could take a guess right now who their backup center is, and I highly doubt that you get the name right. Last season, Nurkic averaged 31 fantasy points per game in only 27 minutes. I will say I also love Daniel Gafford in this range. He's also going about 120, but the main difference here is we know that Nurkic is somebody who can absorb more usage and can take on more usage. He can work in the post. He can pass the ball. If other guys in Portland were to get hurt, the ball ends up in his hands more. That's not necessarily the case with someone like Gafford.
Very interesting, Alex. All right, Shannon. Looks like you're going back to point guard.
Yeah, I'm going to stick.
Sleeper.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to stick with guard. And we're going to go to one of Daniel Gafford's teammates, Tyus Jones, for the Washington Wizards. ADP of 114 on Underdog. We have him projected to be the 61st ranked player based on the points-based format for Underdog. That's just an absolute steal. He should start for the Wizards at point guard with also a new backcourt mate Jordan Poole as well. I expect those two to start at point guard and shooting guard for the Wizards. And we've seen it for the past few years how productive Tyus Jones can be when he's playing 30-plus minutes, when he's in a starter's role. There's been numerous instances where we hype him up as a DFS pick because Ja Morant's missing time for the Grizzlies. It's possible we'll get a full season of that from Tyus Jones this year.
You also have a more of a combo guard, maybe, Ken, for your second sleeper.
I do. I feel like the best ball format was created for this guy. Injury risk, Malcolm Brogdon. 6th man of the year. When he plays, he's great. And with the departure of Marcus Smart, they might even dangerously try to give Brogdon more minutes. Anyway, he's got an arm issue, but he's always got some injury issue. At ADP of 155, that's practically free for a guy who could be a borderline all-star when he plays. And when he doesn't, you got other guards in the best ball format. So at 155, goodness gracious, I love me some Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah, for the past 5 seasons, he has been at about 1 fantasy point per minute. And he played 26 minutes last year. I expect that to go up, like you said.
Alex, take us to your third sleeper, someone you were banging the drum for a lot last year.
Yeah, I mean, this might even qualify as a deep sleeper, which is crazy because
ADP of 170.
Yeah.
ADP of 170 is Naz Reid. He's averaged at least 1.1 fantasy points per minute for every season of his career. Was excellent last year with Towns out most of the year. Towns is back, yes. And Reid probably is like 18 to 24 minutes when the front court's healthy. But if you draft one of those guys, Karl Anthony Towns, you draft Rudy Gobert, or both, you could grab Reid at 170 and make it an excellent stack or handcuff or whatever you want to call it.
Shannon, you want to touch on a big man that Alex talked about a little?
Yeah, he's been mentioned. Daniel Gafford, ADP of 123 on Underdog. I'm super high on him. We've talked about the Wizards. The Wizards are going to be atrocious this year. We have Gafford projected to finish ranked 77th for fantasy points-based leagues. I like the fact that he's not an injury risk like Nurkic is. I want a guy. I've toyed around with best ball lineups in the past and said I don't care about injuries. These guys are starting the season off with an injury. Doesn't matter. Everyone's going to have an injury at some point in the year. I still prefer to back players who are going to be available. If you end up,
love that pick. Love that pick. All right, I'm going to stick with a front court player for my third sleeper. Love this move that the Clippers made to get Kenyon Martin, who's got an enormous ADP of 186. That is practically free. Look, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George will get hurt. Have the last few years not proven this? Plus, you've got fellow Clippers Nick Batum, Russell Westbrook, and Marcus Morris. They're each 34 years old. Mason Plumlee is 33. This gaggle of old-timers will be a mash unit. 22-year-old Martin still has plenty of upside. Last year's per 36 were over 16 points, over 7 rebounds, over 1 made 3, half a block, and only less than 1.5 turnovers per 36 minutes. He played in all 82 games last year. He played in 79 games the prior season. I think it's a great move by the Clippers to get Martin on the cheap, and you should be equally as wise.
There's certainly upside there, and he could be the starting 4 for this team. They could go small and basically play Paul George, Kawhi, and Martin at the 2, 3, 4. It's entirely possible.
Agreed. Okay, it's time to flip the coin now, gentlemen, and dog some players that we think are going to be busts. Alex, you've got kind of a young up-and-comer here as your bust.
I do. My best ball bust at his ADP of 80 is Keegan Murray. This is partially based on format, mostly that it's a points league, because he averaged only one more fantasy point per game than Naz Reid last season, who played like 22 minutes a game. And Keegan Murray averaged 0.8 fantasy points per minute. That might not mean like a lot to certain people who don't play in a lot of points leagues, but 0.8 is not very good. You want to be around 1 fantasy point per minute. But the sort of overall top-down view of this criticism at ADP 80, he's a very good NBA player. Love Keegan Murray in real life, 3-and-D guy, but he's better in real life than in fantasy. He's mostly a three-point specialist right now. Yeah. 2/3 of his shots were from 3 last season. That's fine for category leagues because specialists thrive in category leagues, but because it has individual impact. But in points leagues, it does not.
Very interesting, Alex. All right, Shannon, you've got a controversial bust for your offering.
I'll go twofold on this. The both favorites for Rookie of the Year I dislike in Underdog due to their ADP. Wemby and Chet Holmgren both being drafted far too high. Wemby is being picked in the top 20. His ADP is 19.9. We have him ranked to be finished top 50, which is very generous. I think he's going to be super productive this year. Defensive stats are a big part of racking up fantasy points on Underdog and DraftKings formats. On DraftKings, in addition to defensive stats, double doubles, triple doubles, those things add extra fantasy points. But I'm not convinced he's going to play enough games to be worthy of a top 20 pick in the best ball format. I'm going to take the known quantities instead. Same with Chet Holmgren. His ADP is 42.6 on Underdog. I can't take him there. They both would have to drop probably 15 to 20 picks for me to even consider them on either best ball format.
And or both needs to gain at least 25 pounds, I think. All right. Interesting, Shannon. Great advice. Our last bust, I'm going Kevin Durant at his ridiculous ADP of 9. KD turns 35 this Thursday. He's averaged only 46 games played over the past 3 seasons. Best case scenario, he's load managed. His elite percentages don't help you in Underdog. My first round pick must stay healthy. Give me Halliburton, Young, Spicy P, or even McCall Bridges instead of KD.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ken. And to me, this way that I feel the same way about Durant, it actually bumps up like Devin Booker a ton for me.
All right, well, that's our best ball advice here in late September. We can't end this video, though, without Shannon explaining his tracksuit. Give us the Beastie Boy look, Shannon. Come on. Give some flavor.
My dope tracksuit. I got this as a Christmas
present. You got to fight
year.
For your right to party. But there's a reason you got that particular suit.
Yes, inspired. We'll post something maybe on Twitter with this episode.
Bojan Bogdanovic. I'll put on the site article. Yeah.
Bojan Bogdanovic, Pistons legend. This is one of his pre-game fits last year. I saw him rocking it, walking into the stadium, walking into the arena, and I told my wife I need that for Christmas. So in honor of my boys, I'm wearing it. And
purple stripes,
good.
Right?
Purple stripes,
purple.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right. And I'll add this hat, a gift from coaching legend Dick Versace when he was with the Grizzlies. I'm friends with his son, Dave Versace. Or Versace, as some people like to say. But really, he pronounces it Versace. All right, well, that does it for today's preseason pod. We'll be back to our regular format with emphasis on the waiver wire once the regular season kicks in.